Welcome to a new episode in our series Astrology in the 21st Century. Today with our Norwegian friend Stephen Ellis Birchfield, which has been on this program before. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be back.
And as always, we have a special site for our talk. And that's the case with Stephen as well. And the talk is here on this special site, astrotalk.vonabisw.de. And if you scroll on the right-hand side, you find Talk with Stephen Ellis Birchfield on the 17th of November. And we have something new. As always, I have the right to publish this talk uncut and unedited on the video platforms and my homepages. And Stephen has the right to do whatever he likes with the material. But we have an additional, I put my chart up here in this special site for our talk. And Stephen has the right to use my chart for elaboration. And he has the right also to use my chart in talks with other people, not with me. So, Stephen, we want to talk today about something which is in a rudimentary form on your homepage, which is the course you are going to offer to the public in the future. First question, how many years do we have to wait till you publish your, your course?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't answer that, to be honest. I'm working as hard as I can. I finished the first section of the course. It's in 3 sections.
Okay.
The first section is going to be on the basics, of course. It's going to be a little on philosophy, the philosophy of the past, my own personal philosophy involved in it. Then it's a little bit on geocentric astronomy, because if we're going to use traditional astronomy, they used geocentric movements of the planets, to put it like this.
Okay.
Geocentric. As we discussed after the last one, for example, Mars being at its heliacal rising is something that you won't hear a lot of people discuss it today, but it's something that's important. So I did these on, I had a couple of lessons on astronomy, and then I go into the planets, the signs, houses, things like this, and discuss each one of those topics, the lots as well. The normal basics of what makes up our astrology. And then in the second part of the course is going to be on delineation.
Okay.
Delineation is not prediction, it's just understanding what the chart says can happen and what it cannot happen, right? Will a person marry? Will a person have children? What kind of profession are they most inclined to? Things about that. The first part of this part has taken me a little bit longer to go through than I actually intended, because Robert Zoller was my teacher. He never taught temperament. Temperament was not something that he discussed at all.
Okay. Okay.
However, he presented what he called primary motivation, which is actually nothing more than really it's observing characteristics of the temperament and how they would be expressed in the world, basically. I did a lot of research on this, and when I started writing this particular lesson, I would start it and then have to erase everything and start it again. And it's like the more I got into reading the historical record, the more I realized that the character temperament, what we call character temperament, was not discussed at all in the early astrologers. If you were to ask Abu Mashar or Mashal or even Vicius Valens, what is a choleric person, they would probably tell you, well, what is the sun and what is Mars? Those give you those significations. Although they do talk about character in some instances in delineation. It's not until you get up into Europe, actually, when you had writers, and they were just writers, they were literary writers who were writing about temperament. I mean, you can see it in, for example, in William Shakespeare. I'll just take that as an example. I mean, he's not an astrologer. He was just talking about basic things of that. If you had a melancholic temperament, they said that you had, you know, you were stern and had, you know, a serious outlook and things. I mean, all these things came from because, for example, melancholic is something that's black bile. It rules things that come from the spleen, from the gallbladder. So if, I don't know, I've had a kidney stone before and it's very uncomfortable, and you do not walk around with a smile on your face when you have a kidney stone. So if you understand what I'm trying to say, a lot of the character significations derive from the physical manifestations, right, that were underlying those characters.
Okay.
It's not really until William Lilly that we get the first serious, he spent a chapter on talking about temperament. And from then you had the following Renaissance astrologers got into it. But then we don't really hear anything again until the 19th century, when you get this theosophy and Steiner, Rudolf Steiner, and people like this. But they were not writing from an astrological perspective. They were writing from a theosophical and pure. And Rudolf Steiner, for example, was his experience with children. And he just put them into groups as college.
Yes, yes.
And it had nothing to do with astrology. There was no, and so what I wanted to do is I wanted to bring it back to its astrological roots.
Okay.
Because that's what traditional astrology is.
Yes.
I didn't want to talk about psychology and all these things, because today, if you ask a psychologist, well, what is melancholic? They'll tell you somebody who's bipolar or has serious depression. But that's not what a melancholic was in those days. Melancholy had it's something that's cold and dry. So those two elements made up the melancholy. And from those elements, we derive a lot of characterizations. So it took a long time for me to write this. I had to start again and stop again, and I had to go back and I had to start reading about the nature of the planets because even in their phases to the sun, several of the planets change their elemental natures. For example, Saturn is more phlegmatic when oriental of the sun. It's more melancholic when it's occidental of the sun. Venus, for example, is a time when they don't really say it. They say it's mainly moisture, but they say their term was, it was a, what's the word now in English? Moderate cold, moderate cold and heat. So it could be either one. It could either be cold or it could be hot, but moderate, right? But it was definitely moist. So
okay.
That would say that depending on Venus's phase, it could be, you read texts where Venus was really active, was really the warrior kind of, that's when it was occidental. When it's oriental, when it's occidental, it's much more feminine, much more nocturnal. It's much more of the phlegmatic nature. So I had to go in and I had to start making lists, trying to find key words to show the difference between, well, what's the difference between a phlegmatic Saturn and a phlegmatic Venus? What are those differences, right? And it wasn't easy. You know, you had to read, I had to really comb the text, and I had to spend time to try to land it so that it's not so much to kind of dust away the psychological, I hate to use that word, psychobabble, that's been dumped on top of our traditional astrology, and break it down to its component parts and then restructure it so that it's actually a system of things. As you know, I'm a systems engineer.
Yes,
so
yes.
That's what I do.
And you are developing a conceptual language.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Something that's uniform, that doesn't change from one chart to the other.
Yes.
I mean, that you can use the same language all the time.
So this second section is probably and including in this second section will be how to delineate the main chapter of the Ascendant, I suppose.
Because we're talking about temperament, we're talking about the qualities of the soul.
Yes.
We're talking about a spiritual element that is the Almaton Figuris is involved in here. And then we're talking about health, because the Ascendant is very much aimed at health, life force of a person, things like this. So
that's the second section of the course. What's the third
one?
Well,
that's not all, because then I go through each house and how you delineate, for example, siblings, how you delineate education, how you delineate the family, how you delineate children, and so forth. You're going to go through all of the houses and all of the things that each one signifies.
Okay.
So all of that put together is going to be the second part on delineation. Delineation is like, I'm sure you've painted a room before, right?
Okay.
If you go into a room and you paint around the windows first and around all the lights, you're delineating the room, right?
Yes,
that's what you're doing. You're showing what needs to be painted.
Yes.
And that's what we do with delineation. The last section is about prediction.
Okay.
Then we get into the prediction techniques. And we talk about the major Time Lords, and then particular, I call them universal Time Lords and particular Time Lords. Because we do have universal. I mean, you're in a period that's Fadar, that's over several years. It's not just, or even if you use the Decennials, for example, then it's going to go for 10, almost 11 years in each planet, right? And so these are what I would call universal. They're longer periods of time. Well, they call them chronocrators because they were a period of time. And then you have the particular that zodiacal releasing is another one of these universal ones. But really particular to that, then you get to things like perfections, directions through the bounds, and what you're going to direct and how to direct it. So that part is another major part. It's going to take time to explain. It's going to take time. So right now I just finished the third lesson in the second section. The other lessons will go a little bit faster, but it's particularly what I've learned is that I can't just write. I have to research things and make sure that it's grounded into a good astrological conception, that it's not just, oh, it's my imagination inventing these things, but there's a foundation to build upon. And something that I have some what I call beta students that are taking the course as I write it, and then I get feedback from them, and we get to talk, and we go online. And we had a discussion just this last Sunday where I talked to the students, and we get feedback, and we discuss different things that they're learning. And
are they paying for this working with you?
They're not paying the full what I would fully ask somebody to pay. They're paying part, yes.
So there is a little bit of a fee to participate. How many students are at the moment part of your research program? How to do 3?
Yes, I have 3 students, 3 beta students.
Would you take on more students if somebody would be interested?
Yeah. I don't want too many because it's really a lot of work too. Just answering questions when they're doing homework and things like this, I take a lot of time to answer their questions and give.
So you are content with the 3 people, and as long as there's. I remember when you were studying with Robert Zoller, this didn't work out that in the beginning, and then he said I'm full, and then somebody canceled his participation. So this might be the same with you. If one of your 3 students gets lost, so there would be an opening for somebody else.
Yeah, or I mean, I would have to talk to the person.
Okay.
If they're interested, I will listen to them. It doesn't mean no. I need some. I'm very particular in that I want people who have no. I'm not going to get a lot of confirmation bias or political bias or things like this. I'm more interested than somebody who's really just open to learn about astrology.
Yes, and the best profile would be somebody who has not studied psychological astrology.
Well, that's not really true because 2 of these students had psychological astrology earlier.
And the other one hasn't?
No.
So you have a comparison.
Yeah,
How is the picture? What's your personal experience with the guy who didn't know anything about astrology before he met you and learning traditional astrology in comparison to those with psychological astrology background? Is it the same experience, or is the one without the pre-study the easier one?
Well, let's put it like this. There are similarities in what we call modern astrology to traditional astrology. You have the planets. So with somebody who hasn't had that, they have to learn that.
Yes, that's
Right?
true.
So it's kind of a new thing for them.
But if you are progressing in the bounds, this is something very unusual for psychological astrology.
Oh yeah, I mean they don't understand what that is.
If you do that, how is your experience with the neophyte guy who didn't study outside of the contact with you?
Well, we were not at that point yet, so.
Oh, okay. So we'll see how that goes.
That's the whole part of this course.
Yeah.
Because if you follow it through every lesson, then when you get to that, you're going to be ready for it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And that is what I see in this student that has very little knowledge of
so we have sort of an insight in your workplace, in your craftsman place. This is in progress. It's a beta version, and it's developed every day. Basically, something comes to it, more or less. Besides your family life and your private life and all what there's, you have 12 children and 19 grandchildren, I believe. So there's a lot of other things going on. So let's come back to the cost. How much fee is for the students? How much do they pay?
I only took 50% of what I would normally ask.
And what would be the total, the course fee in the future for the whole thing?
I remember when I studied under Robert Zoller that he asked for the whole course, you paid for the whole thing.
Yes.
Right at the beginning. I'm not asking that.
Oh, okay.
I broke it up into 3 sections so a person can take the first section. If they're not happy with the teaching, if they're not happy with what they're learning, then they don't have to go on. They're not out.
And that would be the first part.
Yes. Or even if after they finish the second part, they say, "No, I don't want to go any further."
Yeah, but to make this clear, this modularized approach,
3 modules.
3 modules. Is the first module identical with the first section we were talking about?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and
the first module is the first section,
and the second module is the second section. So basically, considering the fact that the first part is finished already, right?
Yes.
So do you offer the first module for the public already?
No, I don't want to do that because I'll get too many people following it and I'm not ready at that. Once I get the second section done, I could do that because then I have a buffer room of enough because there's only 8 lessons in the first section.
But you could approach it with the angle of Lee Lehman and other people who are offering courses in the internet as well, competitors of yours, so to say. And basically they approached it in the way they started with the first module, and somebody could learn that, and then they had to wait till the second module was ready. That's not your approach.
Yeah, no, I guess it could be if people were really standing at the door, banging on the door, saying, "I want to take this," I might have to consider that, but they're not. And
this is an interview or talk today, and it will be published on my YouTube channel. And as you know, my YouTube channel is not a viral going thing. So let's say 50 people will watch it, or 100, and then you put it probably on your Facebook account, or you tell some friends of yours. So let's say 100 people watch this video, and then 3 of them decide, I will send Stephen an email. I want to take the first module, and I'm prepared to wait for 5 years to get the second module offered. Would you accept that?
Yeah, I might accept that. Yeah.
Okay.
Under those conditions, I might do it. Yes.
So we have
to be really clear. I'm 71 years old. I might die next
year.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's no promises here. This is something my client, my students now, I've made very clear to them. I said, listen, I'm healthy, right? But I'm 71. Yes. So I don't know how much time I have. You know, it's like
okay.
We
So
living in hard times, and who knows?
let's pretend this interview throws some waves in the ocean of astrology, and three people send you an email. Then you have to decide how much to charge them for the first module.
Well, I know how much I would charge. I've already decided on what the charge would be, because it's by the length that many of the lessons, for example, some of the lessons are almost 100 pages long.
Okay, so
we're talking about small books.
so how much money are we talking for the first module? Or
I think it's $500 for the
US dollars. Okay, so basically, because of this video today, you are on the market available for your first module if somebody accepts the surrounding circumstances that there might not be a second module because you leave the scene for what reasons or whatever, next incarnation or just other interests. But if they accept this circumstances, you would accept them as participants in your first module. Is that correct?
Yeah, I could do that. Yeah.
Okay, now let's
not 100 people, because then I would just be swamped and I wouldn't be able to write anymore.
You would say you would limit it according to your quality of life, I suppose.
Well, I can, I take clients every day. I work on with clients' charts.
Yes,
that's my main focus.
Yes.
I have a backlog of clients now. I have reserved time until summer next year, just to give you an idea of how many clients I've got.
So we are talking about a backlog for the waiting list for the module as well, if it gets started because of this talk of today.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm only one person and I can only do so much.
Okay, coming to this.
Here's the thing, look, I really want to give people a quality.
Yes.
I'm very interested in the quality. I don't want to just give them something and move on. Okay, take it. Okay, move on. But I really want to help them through the course and make sure that they get all of these things, because I find traditional astrology absolutely amazing. I mean, lately some of the things that have been coming up through clients and things like this, I just find it just awesome.
Okay, that's okay. I have a question. We were talking about this book of Benjamin Dykes. It's the Astrology of Saar. Because of you, I bought this, the Astrology of Saar Bisher, Volume 1. And Benjamin Dykes is talking about this book as a companion for the students of his course.
It's a good companion. I agree with him. 100%.
Do you use this as a companion in your course as well?
For the second course, I will, yes.
For the second course, this will be the companion book. Which companion book would be part of the student of the first module, of the first section?
I recommend 3 books that are out there. There's one called Traditional Astrology Today by Ben Dykes.
Okay.
It's a very nice, especially for people that don't have a background in traditional astrology. It's a great book. Okay. It covers a lot of philosophy. It covers a lot of just the basic, real simple basics.
Yes.
Let me see here if I can find it.
I will show it on my page. I have a special page called Astrologie im 21. Jahrhundert in German, but there is a site, Professor Dr. Benjamin Dykes, Antike bis zur Renaissance, and there we have the basics. Let's see whether we find the book you were talking about. Okay, is this your book here on this site?
I'm going to, I have everything here in this.
Here it is Traditional Astrology for Today. That's your companion book you were talking about.
That's one of them. Okay, that's one of them.
That's one. Okay, that's one of the 3 books. Which is the second one?
On basic, Bonatti on basic astrology.
Is that by Benjamin Dykes? Ben Dykes. Let's see, Bonatti. Okay, we have the Bonatti. Okay, let's look. That's the one. That's the first one. Bonatti on Basic Astrology is the second companion book for the first module, first section, correct?
Yes. And the last one is Introduction to Traditional Astrology that has Abu Mashar. And
that would be Basics again. Let's see where that is this one, right? Introduction to Traditional Astrology, Abu Mashar and Al-Kabisi.
Yes.
So basically what you are doing is you are using 3 books out of the portfolio of Professor Benjamin Dykes, his translation books, And basically you saved yourself the time to write your own companion book, right?
Oh God, if I had to write all this stuff, I would never be finished. And we don't need it because Ben has done such a wonderful job of compiling the necessary basics like that. So, so I am able to be a little bit more specific in what I teach and focus on specific points that are more important, not just basics, okay? In the course as well, I can say this because Ben gave me permission. I know Ben very well, and we're good friends. In my astronomy course, for example, the astronomy part of it, he's allowed me to reproduce a part of one of his books.
Yes.
Because Leopold of Austria, in that book, he discusses the Ptolemaic, all the information about Ptolemy and geocentric astronomy is in there. And it's really good. I don't have to do it again. And I asked, Ben was very gracious to allow me to reproduce it with my course. He knows I'm using it. And I give him, of course, lots of kudos and praise for his willingness to help me in that. And then other things that there are other reading materials, but those I add to each PDF that I send out as a lesson. Because the lesson, the way they work, is they will get it as a PDF, right, file, but with that is some attachments. There's even some animation attachments. There's some other writing, Ptolemy, things like this that are open access to. So all these things I've added. What I can give them free, I give them free. Okay. Well, I give them with the course, not free. They have to pay for the course. So, as I said, in many cases, some of these lessons are really, really long. And some people have asked me, well, why don't you break those up into, smaller sections? But I would lose the continuity if I did that. And I don't want to do that. I want to have the continuity in the actual lesson itself. So unfortunately, it gets a little long sometimes, but again, learning it, you have to take the time you need to study it and restudy it and go back over it and do the homework. And then they send me the homework and I don't just, okay, good, write good on the paper and send it back to them. But I'll go through each, because part of the homework that I asked them to do is they have to choose 5 charts of people that they will, from the beginning of the course to the end, that they'll use those people to follow.
Those people are chosen by them or by you?
By them. It's people they know or people that they want to do. So I just ask them, have 5 charts that you're going to work with from the day one, because then I get a copy of those charts, those names. I have it as a file on my software. And so when they send me homework, I'm able to put up that chart. I get to read what they say. I get to make my own comments on it and maybe help them if they're say, great, that looks good, that's fine. Or I can go and say, well, what about this and that? And I can ask them questions. I teach using the Socratic method very much. And I think challenging people to dig into it and research it themselves to find their answers is the right way to go. So I give them, I push them in the right direction and then help them to get there. And
okay, let's dig a little bit deeper into that subject. What you are telling me and the audience is 3 books to be studied by the student, then lessons. How many lessons in the first module?
7 lessons.
7 lessons. And in each lesson, there is a chart delineation task for the student?
Well, not necessarily chart delineation. They just have to answer questions relevant to the lesson.
And then you go through the supplied task by the student and you give him a very detailed feedback.
Yes, I will give them a feedback.
If
they get it right, I just tell them, you got it really good, very good. I'll say something like that. I don't have to make any corrections or anything.
But you still go through the whole thing, or if it's very good,
I go through the whole thing.
Even if if everything is all right and everything is very good, you still go.
Read it. I read everything they send me. I'm not one of these people that just, okay, thank you for your homework, go on. No, I read everything.
So you comment on the best work as well as on a
Yes.
bad work.
If they get something, sometimes they'll make a statement. I'll say that was very observant. That was very insightful to make that comment. Things like that. I like to encourage people that they're on the right track.
If you would calculate this, let's take one of your 3 students. Are they all equally good, or do you have the advantage, one good, one middle, and one bad, or do you?
Well, I don't like the term good, bad.
Well, let's put it. Let's phrase it otherwise. A student who always gets perfect, nothing.
I don't have such a thing. There is no such thing.
Okay, so you have students which are not on the level very perfect, everything. You still have to give some feedback. That's good for my next question, because now I'm interested. Taking your 3 experimental students, let's put them this way, and you have done the first module with all 3 of them.
Well, the 3rd one is still in the first module. The 3rd one,
but the other 2 have passed the first module.
Yeah, and they're on the same lesson together. So,
okay, how much time did they cost you, your time, in mentoring them for the first the two who have passed the whole module number 1? If you have a rough like this calculation, was it let's put it, was it 50 hours per student or 5 hours per student?
Oh, it was definitely more towards 50 hours.
More than 50 hours.
It was towards the 50 hours, yes. It's more towards the higher end than the
so basically you're charging $500, so that's self-exploiting. You are not charging enough money, because that would be
well, here's the thing. This is just a beta group. I'm not some of the questions are leading me. How can I explain this? Sometimes they come with a question and I realize maybe in the lesson I should have worded it otherwise. So it's actually, there's a mutual help here, because I'll see, okay, maybe I should have said it like this. I'm sorry, you misunderstood that. And then I can go back on the lesson and change it. And then I send them an updated copy. Anybody else coming in will have the advantage of that input.
Yes, I agree. But
that's why it takes me a little bit of time.
But on the other hand, those beta students are only paying $250, right?
Yeah.
So basically, we are talking about a craftsman's workshop situation in the beta status, where Stephen is charging $500 for new students who want to start the first module. Would you expect the amount of time for very new students for the first module be also as intensive as 50 hours? That's a lot of time.
Probably not, because in this case, I'm making corrections in the lesson itself that should alleviate some of those.
So we're talking probably about 20 to 30 hours for mentoring.
Yeah, okay, 7 lessons. And okay, the first 3 lessons, there's not a whole lot of homework. It's more for their own learning that they're going to have to get it. But when I get to the 4th lesson on the signs and their subdivisions and on the houses and on the planets and the lots, there's a lot more information there, and there's a lot more required in what they do in a chart. For example, they have to identify all the rulers, they have to do it, and they do that, and it's fine. In this first section, okay, let me just revise that a little bit. I probably didn't spend that many hours. I did have to spend a few. I normally take Sunday mornings is the time when I review all homework. I take the whole day and just go through. So I might spend 8 hours a week for a month, you know, going through and are over an accumulation of the whole thing. Maybe 8 hours a lesson, something like that. So
8 hours per lesson. 8 hours per
about 3 different people. So
okay, so 8 hours per lesson. Are these 8 hours per student or for the whole group?
No, for the whole group.
So basically, out of your time potential, you are investing 8 hours for a group of 3 people for 1 lesson. Is that about correct?
Yeah, maybe not that much, maybe about 5 or 6 hours. We'll say that.
Okay, so we're narrowing it down to basically a course where there's still a lot of mentoring going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of mentoring going on, because especially if they don't have any background in astrology. Because
okay. Let's ask me. You are rather familiar with Benjamin Dykes. Did you talk with him about his course and how much mentoring he is doing?
no, well, I know he has. Well, I don't know what he's doing right now. I haven't talked to him in quite a while now.
Okay.
Since the lockdowns in America being all over the hell world, for that matter, I know he had family things as well that he was involved with. So I don't know where he's at. He said quite a while ago he was ready to do his course, but he also mentioned, I know to me, that he was going. So I can't.
Yeah, okay. How about you are familiar with Tanya Daniels, right? You know her.
I know Tanya.
Did you talk with her about the course she's doing?
No.
So you didn't. So you didn't.
Readers.
You
when I do a lesson, I send it to. I have about 8 people that I send a lesson to when I'm writing it for my students, and have them come back with comments.
Okay.
So it's not just to my students, but it's also to other people in my peers.
And Tanya is one of those 8 people.
She's read everything I've written.
So that gives me the opportunity to ask something else. In my interview with Professor Lee Lehman, we were talking about the School of Traditional Astrology founded by Deborah Holding in England. And the concept of the School of Traditional Astrology is a little bit different to your concept, because in that concept, she has companion tutors. There is more than one person tutoring the students. These 8 people would be sort of a nucleus of, they could become part of your project, right?
I can't make that statement there. I don't know.
Because in the long run, considering our age, we are both of the same age. This concept of having more than one person running the show, in Deborah Holding's course, it's the same comparable situation. Not too much for one person, but the many courses, the medical courses run solely by Lee Lehman in this School of Traditional Astrology, but the orrery course is run by 5 people, if I remember right. And if you're talking about legacies, okay, considering our age, and let's say in 15 years your course is finished, then you are 86, then you have to sort of think about who is continuing this type of work. Is that too early to ask questions like this for you?
Well, it is kind of a reality for me right now, because I don't know why. I'm very popular in South Korea.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I have to say it, because I didn't know about it until all of a sudden I got a deluge of mail coming from South Korea, and people who I have had as clients. I didn't realize this, but they were clients, and they have their own astrology group there in South Korea. And they said, I am incredibly popular there. Okay, that's dumb to say it, not me. But
that's something only internet can provide. Okay.
Exactly. And so, because I've had so much support from these people, I've thought, okay, I'm going to, I have contacts there, 2 people that I know very well in South Korea, and I would do what you just said. I would allow them to translate it and teach it there, and then use me just as a
supervisor.
Supervisors. There you go.
So basically, that's the starting point, because in this STA School of Traditional, so we have the same situation. There is a Japanese guy doing this in Japanese, I believe. So basically, you are bordering to enlarge your astrological conglomerations, I would say.
I'm being forced to do it. Yeah. It's like I never had any aspirations to that. That was not my, but because it just happened, and because they are very sincere astrologers in South Korea. I want to help them and I would like to see them. And they asked me, oh, can you have more? Can you make a website in Korean? And well, I can't do that, but I can give you my course. And they have two really good students there that are very good in traditional astrology who can translate it, and they would love to translate it, and they can teach it. They can.
So you transferred the copyright for translation.
Yeah, I would allow them to
Yeah,
do
okay.
it. I mean, why not? I mean,
let's come back to your eight friends of Stephen's work. Let's put it this way, which you know personally because they proofread your texts you develop. Those 8 people, did you ever talk? Did you do a Zoom meeting? When are you sending only
They're just
one?
People I know. They're people I know for years in the traditional astrology. Tanya is one of them. I just mentioned that.
How about Sharon is part of that group? Now, let me ask these 2 people, because that's the exemplary. Okay, you have Sharon Knight and Tanya Daniels. Sharon is English, Tanya is for German people and for Italian people. Okay, how do I have to visualize this? You have a paper, or let's say 100 pages PDF, and then you send it out for proofreading, right?
Yes.
And you send it to Tanya and Sharon. Do you send it to all 8 people, or is proofreading just for one?
No. Well, it's simply because the 8 people are in different countries and have different backgrounds. Okay, there's in South America, I have in, well, now I have in India, South America, Eastern Europe, US is one, and South Korea. So,
basically, you have already an international group of, let's say, it's sort of, if you would be producing a journal, these are your peers. You send the material for peer review, let's put it this way, then the material comes back to you, and then it's okayed for the course. Is that the
Yeah, it comes back with comments. Some comments I don't apply, but some comments I do. It just depends, because it's my work. Okay,
yes,
first of all,
yeah,
my work.
yes, okay. And did these
I
people
value all the opinions and the input has made my course much better.
And these 8 people, do they know that the first module is more or less ready for marketing?
Yes.
What was their reaction? Did anybody of them ask you, could I do this course in my school as well?
No.
Were they not interested, or didn't you talk about it?
I just never talked about it with them. I never.
Why not? Because that would alleviate, that would take a burden from you, because you could, if some student of their region would come to you, you could say, no, I have my teacher there, go to him. You didn't think about it.
I guess it hasn't come up yet, because it's so far from completion, so I haven't really given it any serious consideration.
But we have found out that your first section is totally ready.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
So
but
basically,
I feel like the first section without the rest is like getting, just buying underwear instead of the whole suit.
Well, buying underwear is an essential step. Okay, that's interesting, because I would think totally different, being my chart. I would think, okay, this is a basic level introductory course. It's a course by itself, the first section. It's an introduction to traditional astrology. It's ready to go. You have not the intention to do a lot of alterations from now on, because you're working on section 2 and 3. And basically my impression is, probably you should talk to those 8 people in a conference, in a Zoom conference, whether they look at it like I do, or whether they look at it like you do. And if you get 8 people on my side, you have a school established.
I mean, it's reasonable to think about that. I have never given it that much consideration.
Yeah. But you have to realize that you are so immersed in the quality of your studies in the last 30 years, more or less, 25 years, and with Robert Zoller, that's already 18 years backwards. So you might have forgotten how you started, because you might have booked an introductory course without these sections following and would still have been content to have this quality of introductory
Well, that's very true.
course.
Had Robert offered me, well, I can only give you the first part of my course, I probably would have taken it as well. Because,
so basically, your marketing strategy is sort of to be discussed.
Well, yeah, and I didn't want, the reason why I broke it up into 3 modules is because I feel that it's such a big commitment.
Yes.
It's a huge commitment to commit. With Robert, I forget now what I paid. It was over $1,000, well over $1,000, $1,200, $1,300, something like that. And I had to commit to it. I mean, I had to
Yes.
commit to that course from A to B, right?
Yes.
There was things came up during the course in my own personal life, which thankfully Robert was understanding. He gave me a couple months to break and, to take care of things in my life at the time. But I think people need a chance to digest what they've had. And my course is specifically designed to make them ask questions so that they're going to want to go to the next, because it's there they will get answers for what they're learning in the first. Okay. I don't want to give all the answers in the first, because
that's okay.
I don't need a second. I don't need a third.
That's okay. Let's go a little bit into the contents of the first section. Is the sect problem part of the first section? Diurnal and nocturnal?
I don't think it's a problem.
No, it's not a problem. It's the approach. Is the approach the astrology?
Everything is based on sect. Yes,
and that's in the first section.
Primary, yes,
and the whole, I suppose, the whole dignities is in the first part as well.
Yeah, I call them shares. I don't call them dignities. We talk about the shares the planet have. I want to get away from some of the terminology that's used, that developed in Renaissance.
So basically, we have a market situation that there are very few people in the English-speaking world, let's put it this way, who offer a course in traditional astrology as such. We have the School of Traditional Astrology, but that's orrery on the traditional side, and medical. They are in the same phase as you are in sort of developing a basic course for traditional astrology. Then we have Benjamin Dykes, and then we have the Hellenistic course of Chris Brennan, and then we have the books of Chris Brennan and Demetra George, and the school in Lisbon with Luis Ribeiro, and going back to Helena Avila as well, who is deceased much too early. And we have the orrery course of Sue Ward. But the marketplace for courses for good courses in traditional astrology, quality courses, in the German-speaking world, there's no such thing at all. Okay, in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, Tanya Daniels would be a monopoly if she would teach if Tanya Daniels would offer your course in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, it would be a monopoly. Okay, you probably didn't realize that, and then I think I leave it at that and come back to your second section. In this second section, we are talking about delineation.
Yes.
And I remember, I can show the viewers, this is not the first video which is done by Stephen, and they are very interesting videos, and I put them together in a film list. I go back to our, let's see, now we have to go to AstroTalk, to the site of Stephen Ellis Birchfield of today. And we have not only the homepage of his, I don't know the English category. So we had this talk on in the spring of this year, I believe. This was there. That's our first video. You can find it via these links. And there's the homepage. And in this homepage, you find his blog and his articles, free articles. And if you want to put your name on the waiting list for next autumn in 2022, you go here, I suppose, lectures. And there's the course we were just talking about, and you see this information is not there yet. Okay. So basically now this is our today's site, and here is a film list, a play. Okay, I recommend this video very much to get a deeper insight. This is Michael A. Bryan with an interview with Stephen, and it's very, very interesting. I watched it the other day again to prepare myself for today, and I can recommend that. And then I have produced a playlist, and as you see, this is with me, the first video with Stephen and me, and then this is the Oraculous podcast I just showed you, and there is this Celestial Vibe video, this 2 hours and 16 minutes. So basically, in this playlist, the viewers can find a lot of information. Now, in these videos, you were talking about your delineation approach in your consulting practice, right?
Yes.
And you were talking, and that will be part of your second section, delineation, and the third section was prediction. We come to that later. Now, in this delineation section, part 2, you will start with the ascendant, as in the videos you say you always start with the ascendant, right?
Well, the very first lesson in this second section is just fundamentals of delineation. There are things that you have to learn that, for example, that the end result of every house is going to be the ruler has determination of that. The planets in the house are very immediate and they're going to have a big effect on the house. They're just simple things about delineation that are really important that people know, because it doesn't do any good just to go and start talking about these things without knowing the hierarchy.
So you are talking about the theory of delineation.
Yeah, well, it's fundamentals of delineation. If you want to delineate, here's some things that you need to know. So that's what the very first lesson is.
Is your philosophy part of that first part in the second section? Because sometimes for some astrologers in the past, the philosophy played a rather important role for how they delineated.
Well, there's some philosophy here. I mean, I just try to help them understand what the difference is between a natural significator, a accidental significator, a specific significator.
Okay.
Because all these things are important when you're going to delineate. And I try to give them examples and show them how it works together, show them from the historical record what they're talking about. And then there's general house delineation. There's delineation using triplicity rulers. In this, there is a philosophical basis where I try to get them to make a specific topic method that's very holistic in nature. It takes natural, accidental, and specific and uses all of them at the same time, and finding, this is kind of the way it was. If you read Saul, his is if you read each chapter and section, he starts off by saying, here's the significators of this subject, right? And then they go in, he quotes all the different authors that dwelt on these things, from Alander Gazar, from Dorotheus, from Visius Valens, and from all of the people preceding him, mashallah, Theophilus, people like this.
Okay.
So this is actually the way Saul taught using his book, which is why it's a very good book, because he doesn't just say, well, do this and do this and do this. But he says, okay, here are the significators. We start here and we work our way through. Boom, 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 boom. When you get a predominance of testimony, then it's going to be this. You understand? It's like you're a lawyer, so you understand what I'm talking about. Yeah. Predominance of testimony. Yes. You don't just take circumstantial evidence and say, well, okay, that's the answer to the problem. But you gather evidence.
Yes.
To say, okay, this is going to happen in this person's life. He's going to have children. Well, what is the testimony of children in the chart? Okay, so you're going to look at Jupiter, if is it in the 10th house. Do you have planets in the 10th house? What planets are there? What about the fifth lot of the children? What planet rules the lot of children? Is it aspected by planets for you? Okay, in my chart, for example, if we take the lot of children, it's aspected by degree by Jupiter in the midheaven. So
Okay.
am I going to have children? Yeah.
So
Okay,
basically, this first lesson in the second section is the general frameworking, and
it's
then
the framework, how we're going to work. Right.
and then the second part of the second section would be ascendant.
Yeah, that's where it's called. I have a specific name for it here. I'm going to follow my. It's called Delineation.
Do you want to take the computer? You can.
It's okay. No. I just explained it.
Okay.
It's called Delineation of the Native's Character, Part 1.
Okay.
Okay. Now you notice I used the word character. I didn't use personality. I didn't use.
Yes. Yeah, I realize.
Because there is a difference between the things.
Yes.
And this I explain at the beginning of this. I go through all the different, and in this one we're going to talk about primary motivation, indications of the ascendant. Okay, and that is basically their hardwired temperament. When I say hardwired, it's what's called the ascendant. Okay, we look at your chart. You had, I forget now what you have on these.
Well, we can look at my chart. It's on the computer. So let's have a look. What you do with my chart? Okay, there it is. Go ahead.
Let's see here. I have to put this down so I see it. Do I see your chart? Yeah, there it is. Okay, so we say, okay, you have a Sagittarius on the ascendant. That's what you're born with. That's what you're hardwired with, right? So that's choleric. Okay, that is the hardwired. Your chart is a diurnal or nocturnal chart.
A nocturnal. As you can see, my sun is.
That means that the ascendant does not agree with the chart. Okay, that means that there's going to be an accommodation being made in your personality.
Because yes, what is the explanation for not in compliance with the
I didn't say not compliance. I said it doesn't agree.
Okay, why doesn't the ascendant not agree with the nocturnal chart?
Because the ascendant is a diurnal sign. It's a masculine sign. It's
oh, you mean because Sagittarius in the tropical zodiac is then corresponding?
Well, it's diurnal. It's one of the it's a diurnal triplicity. Okay, right?
Yes. Okay.
It's ruled by Jupiter, and you have the sun there, so it reinforces the choleric, which means that now I can start making statements about it, about the personality, about the temperament. Now we're talking about temperament, not just personality, because the personality is actually a composite of things. The personality is a composite of our basic hardwired nature, how I act in my daily life. If you've got a choleric, then you're going to be dynamic, you're going to be active, you're going to be a lot of action around your life. It's not going to be passive. You're going to speak in active phrases. I want to do this. I need to, you say this to me. You should do this. You should do this. You should do this. This is all masculine, very diurnal qualities, okay, of a hardwired choleric sign. So that is going to be underlying what comes next in the study, okay? We're talking about your basic hardwire here is choleric. Of course, you have influence from several planets to the ascendant, right? I believe you have Venus aspects your ascendant, pretty close.
Yeah, pretty close, yeah. Venus and Jupiter. Jupiter more than Venus. Venus is 548 and Jupiter is 228. So basically both Jupiter and Venus are enclosing the ascendant via aspect.
So there's a lot of moisture being added there, right to your ascendant. So you have to, so we can start building something about your basic hardwired, who you are as a person.
Okay, in this section 2, chapter 2, delineation procedures for delineating the ascendant. How far does this go? Okay, we learned from your example. You start with the ascendant in Sagittarius, not so good with the sect situation. Then the sun is in the first. I didn't say
not so good. It's just you got to be very careful when you talk about that, because it's not a bad. I mean, it's not good or bad. It just means that in different areas of your life, you're going to have to accommodate a nocturnal agenda.
Yes. Okay. Let's ask me this way. You start with section with lesson 2 in section 2. training the student in delineating the ascendant aspects of the horoscope.
Yeah.
And
that
you
also we continue in lesson 2, because the lesson 1 is, as I said, it's learning the temperament, learning primary motivation. And then in lesson 2, we move to qualities of the soul. And now this is, I go through a lot of the philosophy.
Okay, but let's stick to the ascendant part. You have the ascendant, then you have
the ascendant too.
And you have the aspects to the ascendant,
Yes.
and you have the planet in the first house,
Yes.
And all the aspects to the first house from the rest of the horoscope as well.
Well, the ones that have the biggest influence on the ascendant are going to be the rulers.
Yes.
And there's just no, I mean, the ruler of Sagittarius is Jupiter.
Okay.
And he's aspecting the ascendant. He's co-present with it. Okay. And then you have the triplicity rulers, the diurnal triplicity ruler of the sun, Jupiter the nocturnal, and Jupiter again, we have Jupiter here. So Jupiter is going to be very, his qualities are going to be impressed very much on that choleric temperament, okay?
Yeah, okay.
So that's what we're trying to find a balance of. It's not just saying, well, oh, this sanguine and this, and making all these calculations until you come up with, oh, well, I don't understand any of it. Okay.
Yes, okay.
Every single humor is there's something in it. But how does that show in
Yeah.
you?
Okay.
Right? That's the important part. And that's going to be by the planets that are rulers of the ascendant, planets in the ascendant, okay, especially. They're very immediate. And then planets aspecting the ascendant. Not you have a lot of planets aspecting the sign, but maybe not the degree. And it's very important that in the ascendant in particular, that we're talking planets that are close to the degree.
Yeah, okay.
All the rulers, and if a ruler does not see the ascendant, then his testimony is going to be very inconsistent. It's going to be up and down. It'll be more according to each revolution of the year, whether it sees it or not. And then it's, it's just going to be fluctuating all the time. That's what a version does. Okay. A version just says he can't rule it well all the time.
And then we have this it's the third chapter in the second section. The first lesson was general theory of delineation. Second was the ascendant. The third is the quality of the soul. Now, what's quality of the soul for our viewers in your approach?
Now you're going to make me give away my lesson here.
Well, not really.
because that's an important part of the lesson. It's a part that I've taught. I go into the doctrines and philosophical doctrines a little bit to talk about the qualities of the soul. What is it the philosophers saw was the soul? What is the soul?
What is the soul?
They never tell you what the soul is. This is what I discovered. But they just tell you its qualities. It can either be just or unjust. It can be greedy. It can be giving. It can be... And so they describe all these qualities. And when you get to the astrological side of it, right? As early as, in Dorotheus, we have a whole section on Mercury that talks about its qualities to the soul. I mean, it's there in the text. You just have to find it. So I made a compilation with this lesson. I made a compilation. I went through hundreds of texts and compiled quotes on qualities of the soul, what different astrologers said, how they relate to the soul, etc.
So you made something like a keyword book.
Well, it's not really a keyword book. It's just anything that discusses the soul. For example, I can give you an example here. Let me just open up the document here. So I get it open here. Let's see here. For example, we can go to Vicious Valence. I like Vicious Valence. He says, and it is also necessary to make a judgment about the meetings with the degree of the horoscope. Okay, in other words, directions of the ascendant. For from these climatic times are taken as well as times subject to sickness, injury, and dangerous times. And in a different matter, healthy times are taken, as well as delightful and lovely times, and times consistent with one's wishes in accordance with the presence of the benefics or malefics. For thus, now this is really important, this quote, when the soul is undisturbed and strong. So what has he just equated? He's equated the ascendant with the soul. Okay, he's just equated it. It seems to be prudent and perform its duties, and it stretches out to many things and establishes itself as benefit. Okay, I'm not going to go through the whole quote. It's a very insightful quote about, well, what is the soul? Well, what are we talking about astrologically? Again, we're back to the ascendant, right? Mm-hmm. Dorotheus, for example, that says, the ancients knew the things pertaining to the body from the moon, and those pertaining to the soul from the hour marker, the ascendant, from Venus and Mercury. Okay, so here we have them saying it one more time. Okay, so when we're talking about the ascendant, we're also talking about the soul. When we get to Abu Bashar in predictive work, he goes so far to say that these things you need to direct in order to know the condition of the body, and these things you need to know in order to predict the condition of the soul.
Yeah, okay.
And that happens to be the Lord of the ascendant, and the Lord of the bound and the bound. So,
and this chapter 3 in section 2, lesson 3, yes. Quality of the soul. Is the material finished already? Or
yeah, that one's finished. My students have just gone, the two students that I have at this level.
Would you agree with me that in the literature of traditional astrology of the year 2021, there is no modern book like what you just developed?
There is no modern book like what I've just written here.
Is there a reason
why? I guarantee this.
Well, what's your motive? Not, this is a special in the. It's a chapter. It's lesson 3 in section 2. Okay, but it's standing by itself on its own feet, basically, right?
In some ways, it does. Yeah.
But you didn't intend. You are not willing to publish this as a separate book on the market.
When I'm finished with all of them, I might do that.
Oh, okay.
I might just, when I'm finished with all the ones on the ascendant. Because the thing is here is it's
so let's shorten this.
All these things are going to have, for example, Saul tells us, he says, if you cannot predict somebody's profession if you know they're going to be sick.
Yeah, okay.
He makes that statement clear and plain. A person is going to do a profession that he has the temperament for, that he has the rational spirit for, that he has the emotions to handle. All these things are very vital to know what a person is going to choose or the direction they're going to walk, okay? What they're going to be out after, what is directing them in that direction. So this is why I take so much time on the ascendant, because there's so much to know about it.
Yes.
And it's things that have never really been nailed down. I mean, if we talk about qualities of the soul, these are repeated in the whole Renaissance by Bonatti, Leopold of Austria, of what's his name? I have, what's his name? Monturbo. And okay. You have almost every astrologer in early Europe talked about qualities of the soul.
Okay, so basically we are envisioning a time in the future where there will be a special companion book for section 2 published by Stephen.
Maybe. I mean, I've considered taking all of these putting them into a book format instead of a lesson format as I have now, but so I can footnote them even more.
Yes, but basically you are intending, whereas the companion books for section 1 were Ben Dyke's. For the section 2, you envision to do your own companion book, at least for the quality of the soul?
Well, no, because it's just nothing but would be the first 4 lessons of this. It wouldn't be a companion book for them because you got the first 4 lessons. It could be for somebody who doesn't want a course, but I think this it's up to me because I'm kind of looking at it and saying, well, this is kind of important, all of this. People are so bound up in psychological delineation.
So what's the timeline for this book publication? When can I read it as a book?
We can talk about that afterwards.
Okay, good. Now we're coming to the okay, now let's go on. We have the general theory of delineation, lesson 1. We have the ascendant, this is lesson 2. We have quality of the soul, this is lesson 3 in the section 2. And then we have a 4th lesson, this is temperaments, I believe.
Oh, no, it's on the Alberton figures. In other words, your spirit. What does your spirit decide in all this?
And is that the guardian angel spirit, or what spirit is that?
I don't believe I'm sorry. This is where I disagree with my teacher. It's not a guardian angel. We're all given our own particular spirit. We are all given it. It's yours. It's not a guardian angel outside.
Okay.
But it's inside working.
Is it the daimon in the old text?
Yes.
So it's what modern people call a spirit. It's the daimon, according to the book of Dorian Gisela Greenbaum. Somehow.
I don't know what she says in that.
You haven't read her book. Okay, so is that the last lesson of section 2?
No. Then there's 2 more small sections.
Lessons
that go with these other 3 on longevity and on health and well-being.
Okay, let's skip the details.
That's all the ascendant. Okay, you have what I have here is I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lessons that deal with the ascendant, basically. Okay. Then we go to, after that, we go to social status, rank of fame. We go to professions, financial considerations, marriage and relationships, children, parents and siblings. And that's kind of where I'm cutting off. I could get into much more. I could talk about much more, but I think once a person understands the delineation of each house, they'll be able to do it for any house, basically. That is what I would hope. But anyway, there's 12 lessons in this section.
Okay.
And
now we are coming to the 3rd section. This is prediction techniques. Which techniques you are using? Perfection, I assume. You are using zodiacal releasing with spirit and fortune, or just with spirit?
Well, Valens was very clear about that there's qualifications of what you use and when you use it. Which one you're going to use. If you're going to use, for example, he says if the lot of spirit falls amiss, then you used a lot of fortune. And what he meant by fall amiss is falls in the 12th house, the 6th house.
Okay, let's phrase my question differently. Martin Hermes did a lot of video series on my channel about the zodiacal releasing he called it aphasis with a lot of spirit, and now he's doing the same thing on his channel with a lot of fortune. In your chapter, in your section 3, and it's the main title is zodiacal releasing by the Lord of Spirit and by the Lord of Fortune. Because
I'll talk about the technique of zodiacal releasing.
In general.
Period.
Okay.
Because, and I'll give examples. I'll use it and show them because it's only general. Even Vicious Valens said, you have to see the particulars at the time of the general. He said, if the general significators say this, but particulars say this, then you could get a totally different result.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is where you have to be very careful because people tend to ignore all of Vicious Valens' counsel on this, and he had a lot of counsel. I have put all of his counsel into one document, so I have everything he ever said on it.
Okay.
And so it's very important to know what he said. There may be a time when you don't want to use to find a person's perfect, because he says he qualifies it, and he says, well, if it's the lot of fortune, then it gives these significations. If it's a lot of spirit, it gives these. And he says, but if spirit falls amiss, then a lot of fortune can give those significations as well.
Okay. So what prediction techniques additional? Are you working with Fidaria in your course?
Yes. Well, I've made my own. I know people are gonna laugh. It's based on the decennials. Okay, first of all, the decennials. This I'm going to publish on my website very soon, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Because I want to explain where I'm coming from with this.
Okay.
What really got me interested in it is when I was studying the decennials was the order of the decennials. Okay, how the time lordship went, and it starts from the sect luminary. Okay, in all but Vitius, well, even Vitius Valens follows that, except Vitius Valens would like the planet starting to be the releaser or the predominator or the high leg, as we call it in other places. Okay, but other astrologers like Maternus and Hephaestion do not. They just take it like the Persians did. If it's a day chart, they take the sun. If it's a night chart, they take the moon. Okay, it's that simple. The Persians never made any distinctions for Fidaria to choose the high leg, because the high leg could be.
So you are doing your own thing, basically.
Oh no, I'm basing it on the same technique that I use the decennials, the same. But what I noticed with the decennials is if the sun is distributing, the planet following it in the order of the signs is going to be the next ruler, and then they just follow around. And then I was thinking, well, why did they do that? Why did they choose that? And it dawned on me suddenly, primary direction would carry each one of those planets to the sun, so the sun could hand over his rulership to each planet. It was very simple. I mean, that's what, we talk about directing the ascendant to the bounds, but it's not the ascendant moving, but it's everything being carried to the ascendant by diurnal motion. And this is what happens when you have the sun, and then let's say the next planet is Mercury, and the next planet is Mars, and the next planet is Jupiter, the next planet is Saturn, the next planet is the moon, the next planet is Venus, to end up, okay? Well, they divided it equally. They gave 10 years and 9 months to each one. And the reason they did it, because it equals 75 years. And okay. Which is exactly what the Fidaria do. They give you 75 years.
Is that part of your course written down already?
Well, yeah, I'm writing I'm writing something separate that I'm going to put on my website about this.
Oh, okay.
I find it very important. I find it.
And will you, besides your website, do a book project as well?
Oh yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
I just want to. I'm trying to stick these projects in between.
Yeah. Okay.
And get them finished. And this one, and so I said one day, well, what if you actually directed each of those planets to the sun, and you would subtract the one before it, and that would be its duration, would be its actual arc of direction. So I've created a program, a spreadsheet that I can do this in. It does all the calculations for me. All I have to do is put in the order of the planets and put in their proportion, because each one would give a certain amount of years according to its arc of direction.
So if somebody wanted to follow you in that approach, one would need the software as well, right?
Yeah, I could send it to whoever. If somebody's interested, I'll be glad to.
Okay. Okay. What else happens in the third section beside what we are talking about?
Okay, we talk generally. Here's how it's broken up. I talk about general time lords, how they rule bigger periods of time. What should you expect in those bigger periods of time? Because it's going to change according to the particular times. That's when we talk about perfections, right? Because that's for 1 year. And we can talk about revolutions of the nativity, right? Which is for 1 year. And directions in general, when I speak of primary directions, those can cover several years, many, many years to each direction. So those are all general. Then we get to particulars, which is the revolution of the nativity, perfections, transits during the year. And they had a very specific way of doing it, which Vitius Valens talks about. And then we talk about directions at that time. So you can direct the ascendant of a solar return. You can direct the degree of the perfection for 30 degrees and have planets ruling surface. So it breaks down days, months, years, so forth. We can do monthly revolutions, okay, where if the sun was at 14 degrees Scorpio, then in the next month it would be 14 degrees Sagittarius, and the next month 14 degrees Capricorn, 14 degrees Aquarius. Those are monthly revolutions. What the planets are in those times is very important to see. Okay, we're just breaking everything down to a particular time, knowing that you have, let's say, Saturn ruling your Fadaria at the time, but all these little things are happening under his rule.
Okay.
So there's a method to the madness.
Okay. So we have now covered the whole course as it's outlined in your project in progress. How long for a student starting from zero? And let's pretend everything would be ready and would be on the market. All sections would have been finished by you, and your books have been published, and all the material is available. Let's say in 10 years or 8 years from now, everything is finished, or earlier. If anything, if anything is finished, how long would the time period be if a student could afford to study 2 to 3 hours a day? How long would he need for that?
Oh, it's going to depend on the student, how much they can absorb.
3 hours per day, not more, because he has a job. He has a bread and butter job to fulfill a day.
Exactly. I don't know. I'm seeing what my students are doing now.
Yeah, let's take them.
And they need about a month a lesson.
A month a lesson. And the total course has totally how many lessons?
Oh, the whole course has
yes.
28 lessons.
So we are talking about 28 lessons in total. Okay, so we have a time frame, okay? Now, if somebody would compare autodidactic reading by books, let's say somebody studied all the books of Benjamin Dykes, and only Benjamin Dykes, but all there are, and he would read them 3 times. There is still a benefit taking your course, right?
Well, yeah, I had lots of reading before I learned from Robert Zoller. I was contributing to Project Hindsight. I had all Hindsight's material, including Robert Zoller's at that time. But it's putting it together in a comprehensive manner so that you can do it, right? It's not just, okay, well, what does he mean this? And then the problem with the reading, like, for example, Saul, is even some of the things in Saul are incorrect because he was working with copies of Valens that was not correct. So some of the things that are said about in Valens he's quoting are not correct. So it's like there's a lot of things working in, and then always they took the extremes of things. When things were either really good, the perfect example, or the perfectly bad example. They'll say, oh, just the opposite. But the problem is with 99% of us people in the world is we fall in between.
Okay.
So you have to learn to delineate what all the little nuances.
Yes. Okay.
Mean, right?
So basically,
and you can't learn that from a book.
So basically, you are saying, and I agree with that statement, you need a mentor, a tutor, to take you at the hand and guide you through the material to come to a good end.
Well, yeah, somebody should be there that you can ask a question to.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay.
I don't just volunteer things. Well, I do, because we had a meeting on Sunday, for example, with 2 of my beta students. And I said, okay, it's your time to air your thoughts and minds. And we were able to talk about things. I asked Sharon to participate with that one. I maybe she would like to be, because she's read everything that I've written. So I thought it was nice to have a second opinion. And she said some things that was able to clear up some things for my students, which was very good. Okay, it didn't take away from what I was saying, but it helped.
So you basically, you had the starting point of my vision of a school of Stephen Ellis Birchfield with 8 tutors and international distribution and creating a legacy long after you're gone.
Sharon's she knows her stuff on her own. She doesn't even need it.
Well, but you know,
but that's a nice thing because she understands what I'm saying. She's read everything.
Yes.
She loves the work.
But she doesn't have a structure for her own.
Well,
basically,
not like I have.
What she could do, cooperate with you like Tanya Donalds and the other 6 peer reviewers. I'm waiting and see what happens. Let's see what in the next 10 years happens, because basically I'm convinced that's where you have to go. You need other people to establish a permanent institution long after you're gone, still existing.
Yes. Right now I'm focused on doing my part of it.
Yes.
Which requires a lot of focus. Because I'm either working on my course or I'm working with clients.
Yes, right.
And okay. This is why my course is very much based in my practice.
Yes. So let me ask my typical final question. Did I forget to ask you something important?
No. I like the discussion. I think it's important.
Okay.
You asked me before, would you like to talk about it? I said, okay, sure, why not? Because for me, it's been a growing experience.
Yes.
I have to say, for me personally,
yes,
what I discovered, for example, about temperament, about qualities of the soul, all these things have actually changed my practice.
Yes.
Because they became much more real. I know a lot of people say, well, that's just Ptolemy. Well, it's not. You have to remember, Ptolemy just structured it. But it's not just Ptolemy, because if you read Dorotheus, I read you the quote. He said, the Ascendant and Venus and Mercury are the soul. They give signification for the soul. And this was something else I discovered, that actually it's the inferior planets, those closest to the Earth, that really represent all those qualities that we have of the soul. They may have rulers that are superior planets, but they're the one that it's the inferior planets, those that are close. So it's like those kind of small revelations along the way that help me to see, because you have to remember that one thing I disagree with Ptolemy on, that I have to correct in my lesson, I had to correct. He says, well, it's only an oriental planet that's strong. Well, that's not true, because actually the inferior planets have the same cycle as the moon. That means when they're moving occidental of the sun, they're waxing in a new cycle, okay? When they're coming direct, approaching the sun, they're finishing. Well, this is the moon cycle, right? She starts from the sun, she goes through her phases and comes back to the sun. Well, it's the same with the inferior planets. It's just geocentrically set. Then when they go retrograde, from their first station, when they go retrograde, in appearance, it looks like they're going combust, but they're not. They actually have their own orbit around the sun, which is the opposite of the.
Okay, but let's ask something about Ptolemy's. Would you agree that Ptolemy is a guy who tried to lay a scientific foundation for astrology?
Absolutely, I agree 100% with that.
So, but that means that he discarded all the, let's say, spiritual divination part, which was not based on astronomy.
Well, the thing is, here's the thing about Ptolemy. He discarded things and said, well, they have no basis in reality or
that's what
but
I mean.
He was absolutely incorrect. He was talking about the 12th parts, but the 12th parts absolutely have a basis in astronomy, because the 12th part is based on the daily motion of the sun.
Yeah, I agree on that part. But as if you go into his approach as on the lots,
yes, he doesn't talk about them.
He didn't like those because they were very divination oriented.
Well, yeah,
and I have the feeling. If Nechepso and Petusiris were living people, let's pretend they were living people. Nechepsos and Petusiris, they might have lived, they might not have lived. We don't know. Let's pretend they were living people. Would you agree with my statement? If they would have read Ptolemy, they would have turned in their graves.
Probably, yes.
Okay. So we are on the same page here. Okay, now is that so? We talked about everything we should have
But
talked.
that doesn't, let me just clarify that last point. Doesn't mean that everything Ptolemy says is wrong.
No, I didn't say that.
Because a lot of people discard Ptolemy totally. They'll just
No, I don't do that. What my position is, Ptolemy and Kepler are cut from the same wood.
Yeah.
It's their approach to discard and Morin de Villefranche. The same. These three people are doing the same thing. Lilly is not doing that.
No, Lilly didn't do that. He did a lot of things that other astrologers, I know, I brought this up with some astrologers. For example, him using whole signs, and he did in one case, he used the whole sign.
Yeah.
And I show them this example, and they just say, well, no. Yeah, Lilly did.
We have a plan for tomorrow morning with Martin Hermes for a presentation of whole sign houses. But basically what I wanted to articulate is we have people like Ptolemy, Kepler, and Morin de Villefranche who discarded things because they thought the things they discarded were not grounded sufficiently in scientific data, let's put it this way. And we have people like Nechepsos and Petroseries and Hermes literature, where this approach is not applicable. Would you agree on that?
I know, because they saw things as a conception. They saw planets as indicating, of course, the philosophy was that the stars, provide, and here we have a rough example of what happens because of what they're doing. Yeah, right? You had the perfect diurnal motion, you had the new, as it was called, new, and then you had the other.
How would you position yourself? Are you more a Kepler, Morin de Villefranche, Ptolemy guy in your personal approach, or are you a Christian spiritual guy?
I'm a spiritual guy. I'm a Christian, but I don't drag Christianity into it so much. I mean, I try to keep my
so
faith.
One could say, if you want to find a modern Lilly, go to Stephen. If you want to find a modern Kepler, Morin de Villefranche, or Ptolemy, don't go to Stephen, right?
Definitely don't go to me, because I believe, here's what I believe, because you saw it in the medieval period. You had Hellenistic astrology. And of course, there was differences of opinion amongst the Hellenistic astrologers. Let's get rid of that fallacy that they were agreed on everything they did.
No, they didn't. No, that's not.
But there was a conception involved. That conception I've tried to take with me through. What is the original conception? And this is why I only use whole signs. I use divisions to tell me the strength of the planet, because to use the equator, which in all of the texts is determined to the time, it's what gives us 24-hour days, which is the basis of time, and so anytime you do any predictive work, any primary direction, any direction to the bounds, we're talking about the equator moving, and all the degrees of the ecliptic being translated onto the equator. Why would I do that to divide space? That's my question. That's a question I had to ask myself. Why would I do that to divide the ecliptic? Why? I'm dividing space by time. Well, in some instances, you'll find in the record where they say from this quarter to this quarter is a period of life. The first period of life is here. Second period of life is here. Third period here, and the finality here. Well, that makes sense. I have to be honest and say, well, that makes sense. But nowhere does it change the meaning, substance of a house, of what it's signified, right? So when I do a chart, this is what I was talking to you about last time, that the 10th house to me is the 10th house. But when I talk about the MC, I'm talking about reputation and honors, because it's the highest place in the sky that the sun gets to. Right? And that's why it's called the MC. It's where it crosses the meridian of the local latitude. So, but has to do with reputation and honors. But what about the person's profession? Now we're talking about the 10th house. things like this. So it's like it's learning. I've had to learn to separate the concepts and keep them in their proper perspective. And that's what I want to do with astrology. I don't want to mix things as they've been mixed so that people look today and, oh, I'm sorry, that doesn't make sense. Oh, yeah, of course it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
So this is just where I'm coming from.
So I have to wait for somebody translating all your material into German. Because I know,
well, if you want to read it in German, you will.
I know from Reinhard Stiele, he always has the approach, if somebody delivers a translated script, he can publish it, but he doesn't have the funds to translate the stuff. Yeah. So that is an open question, whether the German-speaking astrology community will have a chance to read Stephen Ellis Birchfield in a translation, or whether the few people who can read good English need to consume the course in traditional astrology by Stephen Ellis Birchfield in English. And there will be a course available in some future time which has been finished, and I wish you all the best for the course and for today. In the name of our viewers in the internet, and for me, thanks very much, Stephen, for doing this today.
Well, thank you for inviting me to talk.
I enjoyed the conversation because it gave a lot of insight how somebody developing a course of that magnitude, which is sort of overwhelming somehow.
It is overwhelming.
And basically you are in the footsteps of Robert Zoller, Robert Schmidt, and Robert Hand. And now we need younger people to follow you. And we'll see how that comes about. Yeah. So thanks for today, and for our viewers, thanks for stopping by. Danke fürs Vorbeischauen und auf bald.